What's happening? What's happening? Welcome back to a special edition, Trash Talking with the Old Heads. Now, you know, as a Spurs fan, we had to do it. We had to do it. Represent Coach Pop. Talk a little bit about Coach Pop. Of course, I got my boy with me, Jerry, the Boston Celtic himself, the
You see
Beantown
it.
non-bullies, because they not bullying nobody right about now.
You
What's
see
happening,
it.
bro?
You see it. What's happening, man? It's everything's all good. Everything is all good.
Oh, you feeling comfortable now? Your
Everything
chest
is
sticking out
under.
again now.
Everything is under control.
Boy, like my
Everything
grandmother
is
used to,
under
boy, you was
control.
quiet as a church mouse for a while, boy.
Hey,
Quiet, boy,
I told
quiet.
you, 02 meant nothing to us. We back in the driver's seat, so to speak.
Driver's seat.
We back in the driver's seat, so
Okay,
to
boy, we're
speak.
not gonna get into all that, boy. It's a Coach
And
Pop
you
special,
and
boy.
you know you know
I
how
gotta introduce the doctor
you know
down at
how
the
we do it
bottom,
over here.
Dr.
You know
Rick.
how we do it.
Welcome, brother. What's happening?
What's going on? Well, I'm glad y'all brought me in. As a Spurs fan, definitely glad to discuss Pop's legacy and hopefully we can shed some light on, some of the historic accomplishments from Pop as well as help celebrate his career. So thank you guys for having me and let's get started.
I appreciate you being on, bro. Before we start, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Trash Talking with the Old Heads on YouTube, Spotify as well. Please hit that like and subscribe button, and we appreciate all the support so far. Like we said, rolling towards 1,000 subscribers. We appreciate everybody. Let's get into it, fellas. Of course, Pop, we all know the backstory a little bit. Started off at the Air Force as a player, which a lot of people don't know. He did start off as a player for the Air Force, where he was a captain his senior season. I think he averaged 14.3 is what I saw. You know what I'm saying? Of course, he went from there to being an assistant coach as well for the Air Force. Then he got his first gig. I think it was Pomona. I want to say Pomona State before he moved on to the NBA. Your memories of Pop. Give me your number one memory. What will you remember most about Coach Pop, Dr. Rick? When you think about just him as a coach overall.
Oh man, I mean, when I think
Especially
about
being a Spurs fan the way you are.
yeah, when I think about Pop, number one, I think about winning. It's he was very consistent. They obviously didn't win the championship every year, but if I'm not mistaken, I think he had like 22 winning seasons in a row. And that just goes to show me the consistency that he had, as winning. Once he took over, the Spurs were always a threat every year. They were never a year, outside of, the year before they drafted Tim Duncan. Outside of, they were always a threat, even until, before Kawhi left. That was, the last year that they weren't a threat to win the title. So for me, it's just consistency, winning, being able to, I hate to use that term, but he learned under Larry Brown and play the right way. They always played, solid basketball, solid defense, solid offense, never any issues, from the players. And it's just, really running a first class organization from top to bottom. So that's my biggest memory of Pop.
Oh, cool. Jared? From the
Man,
outside looking in, from the one who on the show today who's not a Spurs fan.
man, where do I start with I started paying attention to Pop, number one, because of this dude right here. Big time Spurs fan, always speaking up for him. Definitely doing a lot of gloating when they won championships and keeping the Lakers out and that type of stuff. But for me, I always go to the foreign player movement. He consistently had his scouting department overseas, looking for great talent. Now, we had plenty of foreign players in the league before him, but it was normally, a team would have one. They might make the starting lineup. They rarely made the starting lineup. Six man, when you start talking about those type of players. But when he really got into it and scouted other countries for players, he was bringing in starters. You know, we're talking about a very young Tony Parker, who turned out to be a Hall of Fame player. Um, Tiago Splitter comes to mind. I'll never forget when he was drafted and they said, this is a guy you don't want to meet in the dark alley. I'll never forget that. Even bringing in players from other teams. When he brought Turkaloo over, I think from Sacramento, I think is when he grabbed him up, or it might have been later in his career. I'm not really positive on that, but he was also quick to pull a cat off the stage like Sandman if they weren't performing. Those are the type of things that that really stick out to me, because that's where my term terrorist was born. You know, if a foreign player came over and balled out, you know, maintain the status. You talk about the Manu Ginobilis of the world. That's when I started, you know, terming those guys terrorists. Now, listen, don't jump on me, world, for saying terrorist. That just means they were a bad man, like what Stephen A. said. That just means they were a very good basketball player. But yeah, that's what sticks out the most to me, that the foreign player movement that he brought to San Antonio, because they kept, you know, foreign players on that team.
Right, right. I think for me, it's not so much even the basketball. It's his willingness to speak out on other things that were non-basketball for me, which made me respect him a lot, because he took criticism for a lot of it when he spoke about political leadership, racial injustice, social responsibility, those kind of things. His willingness to speak out on it and take the heat for it, I think for me is the biggest thing that of course, the stuff with the basketball, absolutely, we'll get into it, but that to me, his willingness to take the heat for that and not care about it at all was the big thing for me. So I think for me, that's what I respect about him most, and what I remember about him most, other than, you know, the championships, of course, that he brought home for the Spurs. But that part of it to me is his legacy. For me, that's a big part of his legacy in my mind as a Spurs fan, and the things that I respect the most. And I think for his players too, I think that's why they loved him so much too. He was willing to speak up about things that affected them outside of the basketball court. So for me, I think that's the number one thing for me that I take away from it. But let's take it to the court. I think when I read an article where he was saying, really, he said his biggest mentor was a coach at Air Force named Hank Egan, who ended up being, he was an assistant when he first got there, but he ended up being the head coach of Air Force and actually brought him back as an assistant to Air Force. And he was on Bob Hill's staff in the pros when Pop got his opportunities. And so Pop was there with him as well. He said he's the one who actually taught him how to have practice, how to interact with his players. He said he gave him credit for a lot of that, not so much Larry Brown, but he said he learned most of everything he learned about coaching from Hank Egan at the Air Force. So let's take it to the court. So when you think about his style as a coach, what do you think made him so successful? We'll start with you, Jerry. When you think about the style of play that the Spurs had, what did you see watching?
Well, Spurs haters would say Pop got uh,
Lucky.
good, or his coaching recognition came when he got Tim Duncan. That's what Spurs haters would say.
Right.
But for me, Rick said part of it when he said, you know, playing the right way.
So how much of it would you give that to? Like, let's stop right there, because I hear it as a Spurs fan. I hear that all the time as well. You know what I'm saying? Hey, he had David Robinson already, and then they looked around and got Tim Duncan. So if you had to put a percentage on it, how much of it was Pop? How much of it was being fortuitous and getting Tim Duncan to go along with David Robinson?
I'm sorry, I can't give most of the percentage to I have to go. I'm gonna go 50-50.
Okay.
And the reason I'm gonna go 50-50 is because he was a GM. He was a GM first.
Right.
So he had to have some type of wherewithal to build teams around his great player, because to me, that's what playing the right way means to me. Playing the right way doesn't mean XO, blah, blah, blah. That's not playing the right way to me means a coach that builds his team around his players. Like, for example, I'm gonna give a negative example to that. To me, Syracuse coach for a long time, Boeheim. Jimmy Boeheim, is considered a great college coach, and he is. With all due respect, he had a bunch of great players, all of that. But for him to use that 2-3 defense, no matter what, no matter who was on the team, that was black. That never sat right with me, because if for me the very best coaches will definitely, hey, this guy does this well, this guy does this well. As a team, we do this well. That's playing the right way for me. It's with the tools that you're given out of the toolbox, and you bring the very best out of that situation. Doc could take his, Doc would, if you remember, not Doc, I'm sorry, Pop would, if you remember, Pop would, he would sit his starters if the game didn't start. You're talking like 2 minutes in the game. If they weren't playing the right way, he would sit all 5 of them and bring in everybody off the bench and let them ride. Until, not until the game was in hand, but until it was going like it was supposed to go, like they practiced and they were playing for one another. So that's what playing the right way means to me, from Pop. And there's a certain bravery in doing it like that. So yeah, it's 50-50 for me. He was able to use all the ingredients to get the meal cooked the right way. And hey, the proof is in the pudding. They won a lot. And when you think about the stars that they were able to beat and keep away from championships, we talk about that with Michael Jordan a lot. Hell, the Spurs did the same thing. They were able to get some get back in certain situations and all that. So 50-50 for me. He was a good coach. He could do it.
Okay, all right. What about you, Dr. Rick?
I'd probably say about 50-50 too, because every coach has great player, every winning coach,
Right.
A great player. So that's a moot argument from my perspective. So, but you obviously, great coaches can't win without players. And, we've seen a lot of players who, are great individual players that don't win a thing without coaches. So, I say it's 50-50, to your point, Jared, he put players in position that they can succeed. Players like, just an example, like Bruce Bowen. Bruce Bowen was a limited player, in all honesty, for NBA player, but he was a good defender and he learned how to shoot the corner 3. And so if that's all you can do, they never put Bruce Bowen in a high screen and roll, or
Right.
do what he does best, and being able to coach those players and put them in the right positions and deal with the different personalities, and having the wherewithal to draft players that not only fit the system from a schematic standpoint, but also from a personality standpoint.
Right.
Players who were level-headed, wanted to win, willing to listen, willing to learn. That says a lot. And just the fact that he was able to find players like Tony Park at the end of the first round and Ginobili at the end of the second round and put them into his system just as other players are on their way out. It says a lot, because the first championship looked a lot different than the middle championships, looked a lot different than when they beat the Heat. And
Right.
he was able to adapt not only to his players but also to the way the NBA was headed. Playing with 2 big men, in the beginning, and then sort of breaking that up, and then going to a little bit different offense, then a different offense later on, and then even a different offense toward the end when Kawhi was the main player there. So You know, it just goes to show, you know, in my opinion, a good coach, like you said, Jerry, is able to adapt to their players and to the circumstance, and they just not rigid to a system and try to force players to fit into their system. So I agree. I think like 50-50 would be a, you know, a good mix.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to I put it, I would probably go right about there too. I tend to lean more towards the player getting a little bit more of it, but maybe I would say 55-45. But I give him a lot of the credit because to me, being able to consistently get players to sacrifice the self for the team goal, that to me was his biggest thing. And I know it's some people say it's overstated, but not to me. Tim Duncan never took more than 18 shots in a game in any season. Tim Duncan could have easily been a 28, 30-point scorer if he hadn't bought in. You know what I'm saying? So to me, to be able to get Manu could have been a 20-point scorer every year if he didn't come off the bench some. You know what I'm saying? So getting them to be able to sacrifice for the betterment of the team, to me, that was his biggest thing for me because I always thought he could have used Tim more. You know what I'm saying? But like you say, the proof's in the pudding. They won. You know what I'm saying? I always used to be like, man, why Tim don't get the ball more? Why he don't get the ball more? You know what I'm saying? Because some seasons I looked up and he was getting 14 shots a game. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, man, why? You know what I'm saying? Why isn't Tim getting 20 plus shots? You know what I'm saying? But his system worked. You know what I'm saying? That ball movement, you know, player movement, it worked. You know what I'm saying? And I think you know it works too because so many of the players on other teams respected the way they played so much and would always say it. You know what I'm saying? Man, I wish I could play for a coach like Pop. You know what I'm saying? So you know what he was doing was working because it was so well respected by other teams and other players on other teams. But I always admired that he could get everybody to sacrifice the self. You know what I'm saying? Nobody even really thought about it because Tim could have easily been like, nah, dog. Because I know that time they were talking about him going to Orlando. I was like, oh man, we about to lose Tim because he want more shots. You know what I'm saying? Or whatever. But he even decided, you know, nah, you know what I'm saying? Coach Pop was one of the reasons he stated that he stayed, you know what I'm saying, because of Coach Pop. And for me, that was really, really big. So my percentage wise would probably be, like I said, 55, Tim and Parker and that crew, 45 Pop, but he deserves a lot of credit for keeping that thing stable, like you said, you know what I'm saying, creating that environment for those players where everybody was all in. And the thing why he has to get so much too, it lasted so long.
Right.
Be different if it was a 5-year run, 6-year
Dynasty,
run. Okay. But
dynasty.
man,
Yeah,
you talking about 20 years of straight, well, I think 20 or 22 years of straight playoffs. You know what I'm saying? Every year you knew they were going to be somewhere in the mix. You know what I'm saying? And that doesn't just happen by happenstance. You know what I'm saying? So he deserves a lot of the credit. You know what I'm saying? As far as I'm concerned.
that buy-in you talk about too. You made me think of you know, Tim Duncan when he came in insisting that they constantly put him at power forward and
Right.
label him as a power forward because he has so much respect for David Robinson
Right.
at the center position. So
Right.
that right there speaks to the buy-in or the proper buy-in of players
Right.
that played under him. That humility you have to have not only as under your coach, but also for your teammates and that camaraderie and keeping that particular aspect of the game together too. So buy-in, when you said that, that's the first thing that popped into my head.
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about credit. Now let's talk about the one thing I've heard the naysayers say is also Pop started. Load management. Let's talk about it. You know what I'm saying? And I remember when he first kind of started doing it, you know what I'm saying, with some of the older players, you know what I'm saying? And I didn't think much of it. I'm just gonna be honest. I really didn't think. I thought it was, you know, unique. You know what I'm saying, to do it because before then, like I was telling Jerry the other day when we talked about it, if you were healthy in the NBA, no matter what age you were, you played the game. You know what I'm saying? That's just how it was in the NBA. You know what I'm saying? So, does he deserve any blame for starting the load management? Dr. Rick, we'll start with you on that one.
I mean, if you really want to assign blame, yeah. But even looking back then, you know, comparing it to the type of load management that cats, you know, today, it still wasn't to that degree. You would see him sit, the older players every now and then, back to back, on a stretch of games, they'll sit every now and then, but I don't ever remember a season where, Tim only played, 50 games or something like that. I think that now, people took that and they just took it to the extreme. So if you want to get,
Right.
I guess he started it, but it definitely went to this extreme. I think a lot of teams over the years have just run with it. And, and I understand. I mean, if you're going to make the playoffs anyway, you might as well save your, players. I mean, I get it from that standpoint. But from a fan standpoint, it's, obviously not the thing that, and I'm sure the league doesn't want to see that either, from a, TV standpoint, financial standpoint, what have you. But, as far as blame, I mean, I guess you can give him, since he did start it, but, I would to what we're seeing now. I think teams are just taking it and run with it to the extreme, and it's just, gotten out of hand, to this point. So yeah, I mean, I guess so. Yeah, I guess you can blame him for that, but I still don't think that that really takes away from his ultimate legacy at the end of the day.
Right. How about you, Jerry? Does it take away anything?
No, it definitely doesn't overshadow. How could it? Because you talking about the final years of Tim Duncan, Manu, and Tony Parker. So how could it? He had done most of his winning by then. It was truly because his players were older. It gets blown up because of that situation in Miami, or after Miami, or before they played Miami, and they sent those three players home. Like literally put them on a plane and sent their ass home. And
Yeah, I think that's when David Stern fined him that
yeah,
time.
yeah. So he got hit over the head for that move. Which David Stern was, he's right for doing that, because that was extreme. You know what I'm saying? That was extreme. But in true Pop fashion, did they win that game? Did they win the next game with the
Yeah, I believe they did. I
I think
remember
they did. I think they
what
won that.
made Stern mad at that time, he said he was sitting Tim Duncan due to old age. I think was
Yeah, because he put that on he put that on the injury report.
right,
Just put
right.
they're old. So that's the thing that that loads it up. But how could that erase all the winning, all the great play, the great moments? It doesn't. You know what I'm saying? It just does not. Not for me anyway. And like Rick said, to compare what he did with those three to what we see now in load management, we see young players sitting down today. We get to a certain point and we see guys not playing back to backs, or not playing the next game because they played 40 minutes in a previous game. And it's like what he did with Tim, what he did with Tim, Manu, and Tony, and sending them back home. Did that hurt? Did that hurt TV ratings for that game? Yes. Did that hurt the fan experience in Miami or wherever they were playing that game? Yes. But does it leave the stain or stigma that we're seeing on the game today, where it's more than one team? Sometimes, in some cases, it's more than one players, and damn near every time, it's definitely the star player, and you don't have the quality of game that you expect. When you look back on what Pop did, the reserves came in and we won the game.
Right.
We see it now, and it's like they ain't got a chance in hell to win the game. Like, we don't even watch the game. Once we find out a certain player is not playing, we don't even watch the game. I know I don't. I'm like, man, I'm not watching this shit. So no, it doesn't overshadow anything that Pops ever did for the game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's overblown. I mean, the thing is that they were older when he really started to do it. Don't get me wrong, he did it a little before they were really, really old, but it was because Manu played a lot of summer ball. overseas and that kind of deal. He kind of spoke to that because, hey, he'd be like, sometimes Manu would go play ball overseas during the summer. So he wanted to relegate his minutes a little bit during the season. So, I mean, I just think I don't blame him for it. You know what I'm saying? He had a team, he knew his team, you know what I'm saying? And it was effective for them. I don't think he saw it being what they're doing now. You know what I'm saying? Where some of these dudes just sitting out back to backs just because, you know what I'm saying? A lot of times when he did it, it was toward the end of the season when he was getting ready for a playoff run. He knew he was going to have a deep run into the playoffs. So I don't really, you know what I'm saying, think he deserves a lot of blame for it. Yeah, did he? I guess you can say. I know I saw one argument say he's the godfather of it. So I mean, I'll take that. You know what I'm saying? Maybe he started a trend he didn't mean to start. I don't think he meant for it. He even said he didn't mean for it to look the way that it looks now with some of these teams and what they do now. You know, I think they took it and ran with it. I mean, like I said, I don't really. Do I think it's overblown a bit? Yeah, some, you know what I'm saying? Because I think as you get more information, you have to change the way you think about some things, you know what I'm saying? If you had, especially what you have to pay these players now, you know what I'm saying? You got looking at $300 million investments in players now. You have to look at it now. You really do, you know what I'm saying? Eventually, I think they may even shorten the length of the season.
I hope
That's
not.
probably, I do. I really think they may do it. You know what I'm saying? Because at this point, but my thing is then even are you still gonna get what you're looking for, even if you do that? Because you shorten it to 60, then they'll start playing 45. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not sure that would even fix it at this point. You know what I'm saying? I just think the way they did it, they've done what they can do. You have to play 65 to get the awards or whatever. I think that's probably the best they can hope for, that there's some pride about being an all NBA player, winning defensive player of the year. I think it's really the best they can do, but I don't blame Pop for it. You know what I'm saying? I really don't. And I definitely don't hold it against his legacy at all. You know what I'm saying? So let's, no, go ahead, Jay. What you about to say?
Well, backing up to what you just said, I really hope we don't get to the point where we start losing games. Uh, I'm hoping in that regard, I'm hoping that the owners look at it more so as a loss of money with the ticket sales than trying to preserve cats that don't want to play every game. Because in some of the cases we just got cats that don't want to play every game. It just that's just the God honest truth. Um, when you keep telling me that, let's go with what Rem always saying, they're protecting their investment and the players don't have any control of that. To me, I don't believe that, because if a player isn't hurt and the GM or the owner or whatever is calling down saying, "Hey, sit them," the player can always veto that. Now he can veto it because the owner got to take that shit up with the coach. The owner and the GM ain't gonna come down and talk to the player and say, "Hey man, we need you." No, he don't do that. If the player wants to play, he's gonna play. We just saw it with Embiid. Embiid had no business playing in the Olympics. Everybody said that when he went over there. And then, just like we expected, when he came over, he was compromised for the season. But once he got well enough to play, he was like, "Fuck that, I'm playing." Right? We saw him try, and it was the first time we saw him try to play as much as he could, although he was compromised. So it's up to the player.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree. And
I don't want to
that's
see
why I
a day
can't
where he
wait
go
for
to
our
60
state of the
something.
NBA conversation when we're gonna dive into all that when we do our state of the NBA. But before we go, I gotta ask one last question. In the Pantheon, Dr. Rick, where you put him? Where is he? Because
For
a
coaches,
friend of mine asked me that the other day, and I thought about it. I said, man, let me get back to you. Where is he? Where does he rank in the Pantheon of coaches? Where would you put him?
oh man, I'm gonna go ahead and exclude, Red Auerbach. I did. I mean, that's a different era.
Right, right,
didn't see any of those games. They had
right,
like in the league and the Celtics.
right, right.
15 out of the top 30 players.
Exactly. 11 teams or whatever it was.
Oh,
Like teams
wow.
in the league,
Wow.
whatever.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. No respect. No respect.
You know, no shade at them. That is what it is. But, you know, to me, and, you know, you can take it with a grain of salt if you want, because I'm a Spurs fan, but to me, he's number one, and it's not even a debate in my opinion. You know, obviously, you know, a lot of people going, you know, bring up Phil Jackson. You know, I got a lot of respect for Phil Jackson. You know, he did his thing. He won, you know, in two different places, multiple titles. But you know, there were also some sparse years in Phil's, you know, those non, you know, Jordan years, the years after the Lakers broke up, etc. Those weren't the same kind of teams. You know, going back to percentage pie, you know, that's definitely somebody I would probably do 75% player, 25% coach. And there's really no other you know, those are really the only two in the conversation as far as I'm concerned. You know, anybody else, nobody else is even within shouting distance of those two with regards to being the coach. Like I said, taking Red Auerbach out of the picture,
Right.
different time. But yeah, so I mean, I think he's number one. You know, he's won consistently. He won with different styles, different types of players, different eras. You know, so yeah, to me, he's number one. You know, and it's not even close in my opinion.
Okay. Jerry, you agree?
No, hell no. No. I don't put him number one. But I don't put my boy Red number one either. I have Phil number one. I would probably go Pop at two over Red. For the same reasons that Rick said, you know, it was a different time back then, far less teams. And we did get, you know, the very best players in the league for the most part out there in Boston. So I would put them. I would put them at two, mainly because okay, so yeah, Phil Jackson had MJ, Pippen, Horace, Rodman, great players. But for the job he was able to do in LA and get another three-peat, that was, you know, you got
He might have froze up on us.
motivated enough to
Oh,
play.
there he is.
Because let's face it, Shaq was a freaking goofball, half-ass for his whole career. People
No,
don't.
not
People
during
don't.
them Laker years. He wasn't. No, I'm not giving you that, bro. No, bro. No, bro. Don't even try to use that to post up Phil Jackson. He had the
Here's
most dominant player in the NBA.
he did, but Shaq was never the most focused player. You talking about a guy that
That 2 to 3 year period, he was.
if you see, there we go. That's the point I'm getting to. 3 years of straight can't be stopped dominance. 3. But in my opinion, when he first got to LA, he had the best team that he ever played on. That man had Nick Van Exel on the team. He had Kobe, and he had Robert Ory, Elevation Jones. He had all those cats on the D Fish. He had all those cats together, and they ain't win shit. In fact, they got swept out of the playoffs a couple of times. So for him to get Shaq to play up to his potential for those, like I said, 3 dominant years, that's impressive, especially when he's so envious and definitely want to be looked at as the best player and really don't want nobody else in that category. Let's face it, that's what happened in Orlando. So the job he was able to do with Shaq, I commend him on that. But I have Phil number one and Pop right after him. The dominance is there. The dynastic element of his teams are there. We talked earlier about how he was able to get everybody to play the right way. I'm a Pop fan. I'm not a Spurs fan by any measure, but I'm definitely a Pop fan. Even when I look at what he was able to do with the Olympics, get the Olympics right back on track again. That one thing he expressed with the players, I've seen in several interviews and several docs, how he brought his military influence into that to get the players to buy in. Once again, we're saying those words, buy in to the aspect of, hey, this is for your country. Because I look at, me personally, I look at the Olympics as a bunch of bullshit. For these players to and athletes to continuously go over there and you know, take them 4 years to try to make it and get over there, and they're not really getting compensated the way that they should unless they get endorsements or whatnot. But it makes so much money. So to get these professional athletes to look past all of that and to really do it for America, who, let's face it, you know, it's you know, we have some issues, you know, we got some issues over here in this country, but to get the players to focus solely on, hey, it's us against the world, and get them to come out and play as hard as they can under his tenure. I have to applaud him for that. So yeah, I got him at 2. And another thing, and I sent y'all this too. Y'all look at it real quick. I just sent it to you on your phone. His coaching tree. That's another thing. His coaching tree. I just sent y'all a graphic on his coaching tree. That's something that's big on Pop's resume as well. When you talk about the first person that stands out to me is my girl Becky Hammond. What you know, when he put her into the summer league and they won it, I knew that something was brewing with her, and I knew that she, you know, in that moment she was a leader of men, and now, you know, she's a multi-champion over there with the Aces. The other person I think about is Coach Brown. You know, he was one of the first people to get LeBron to some type of success, and his defensive knowledge has helped any team that he's been a part of. So it's just all over the league, man. Pop's influence
Man, let me go and
on
break
the NBA is great.
Coach Pop.
Number one,
sir.
man.
I'll tell you why. For the same reason one of the reasons you knock LeBron. He the LeBron of coaches, Phil Jackson. He went to where it was easy. Well, let me take the word easy out of it because I respect what he did. Let me not say easy, but he went where the stars were. He followed. He looked for the right situation, just like Bron does. You know what I'm saying? To go coach. Now, does his way of doing it work with those superstars that he goes and finds? Absolutely. But he searched it out. Coach Pop didn't go nowhere. He said, I'm gonna create a system of play where whoever I bring in here is gonna adapt. To me, that makes him the better coach.
Whoa.
Mind, you know what I'm saying?
Whoa. How does he get the finger pointed at him for leaving Chicago? He didn't leave Chicago because he wanted to go and coach another dynastic team or better players. That's not.
Why go to LA?
Call it Phil Jackson and LeBron and coaches is crazy. That's crazy.
Why go to LA?
Huh?
Why go to LA?
Another LeBron comparison, you know, you were saying, you know, about the three-peats. You know, is really, do you value consistency over, you know, sort of
Exactly.
You know, you know, and we all say, you know, that you know, we feel Pop has been a more consistently excellent coach than Phil Jackson, just over a length of time. You know, and you know, so I think that, you know, in my mind sort of puts him over the edge. Like I said, I got Phil Jackson too, so it's no shot at him.
Right, he's 2, right.
It's you know, it's just I feel like Pop is better, and I didn't even think about the point Dante just made about him, you know, sort of looking for the best situations and
hand picking your situation.
yeah. I mean, you know, I don't blame him. I mean, yeah, I would
right. It was smart. Don't get me wrong, it's smart.
But you know, it is what it is, and I think that, you know, having you know, the ability like Pop had to, you know, take those teams, be consistently good with those teams, in and out players.
Change the way the team played, then change the system to the players. That to me is coaching. You know, that's coaching. You know what I'm saying?
No, man, come on now. He didn't. The field didn't leave Chicago, but because he was looking for the next best thing. He left Chicago because of the GM. GM said this is Fields' last year. That's what the GM said. He said, I don't care.
What did he do in New York without the star?
They can go 82. They can go 82-0, and he's
still
out of here.
In New York, without the superstars, what did he do?
He had a trash team. He didn't have any control. He had a trash team.
The superstars. Trash.
He had a trash. He had a trash team in New York. Trash. What else was he gonna do with that team? Name the people on that team.
That team was not total trash.
Oh my God, that man had Carmelo Anthony. I can't even think of another player on the team. Who's Shumpert? I think Shumpert might have been on the team.
That same team, they not trash.
Oh, you know what? I do know who else was on that team. He had Porzingis on that team. Get out of here.
You give Pop that same team, they not trash.
Man, please. They ain't making the playoffs with no Porzingis.
Man, you crazy.
Hello, Anthony.
What evidence do you have of that? You give Pop any kind of team, he making the playoffs.
Pop to okay, with the evidence
because they're gonna play defense.
I'm gonna give you.
They're gonna play defense regardless.
I'm gonna give you my evidence. Pop came in as a GM in 94, 95. They were 62-20 that year when he was a GM. You know why they were 62-20? They were 62-20 because they had David Robinson, the freaking MVP. So come on, man, stop. He didn't have no
what are you talking about?
Player.
You love Porzingis now with your boys. So what are you talking about?
Carmelo at the end of his career and KP are rookie. Come on, man.
Carmelo was not at the end. Stop it, bro.
He was at the end.
You're making stuff up now, bro. Now you're making stuff up.
Carmelo Anthony was at the end of his career.
Making stuff up, bro.
He was only there 2 more years. He was only in New York 2 more years while KP
he was still putting up numbers at that point.
He wasn't even hardly playing because he was hurt, because he was old. Once he left New York, that dude was a journeyman. Come on, man. He didn't give nothing to no other team.
Man, you give Pop that same team, they make the playoffs.
Especially
they ain't making the playoff with that.
Terrible then. There's no way they shouldn't have made the playoffs at least.
Thank you. In the Eastern Conference. Stop it, dog.
At least the 8th spot. Come on.
Lord have mercy. With an old Carmelo Anthony that don't do nothing but shoot contested shots and KP. Are y'all serious? And Shumpert? No, Shumpert might have been gone, but whatever. Get out of here.
You know Jordan is my GOAT. So, I ain't taking nothing away from Phil. They had a great run, with the Bulls, Lakers, whatnot. I hated them with the Lakers. Hated the Lakers at that point.
I hated them too.
So, it is what it is. But, it's, like I said, I can hear an argument for Phil Jackson. I just don't think he's number one. Right. Anybody else you bring into the conversation, I don't want to hear that. Going back to what you're talking about, coaching tree, even though it's not a direct coaching tree, but you look at Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr, is a pop guy.
He on here. He on the graph.
Ime is a pop guy. So some of the better coaches in the league now, obviously Steve Kerr is one of them, and they learned that, from Pop. So it's, I think that I can't name a single coach from Phil Jackson.
Man, I was just about to say that.
Well, one that has had any success. If you do, I'll wait, so.
And then I read this article, and I'm glad you brought it. It reminded me of the article I read the other day. It said the Phil Jackson coaching tree is every bit as tragic as you imagine.
I only think one coach. I can only think of one coach that got an opportunity, and that was Clemens. I think Clemens got a job at one point, but it was short lived. But I
coached Phil too. His system wasn't even his system. It was Twitter's system. Wasn't even his system.
That's a good point. That's the only point. Those are the only points that I take in that argument. Other than because y'all saying, we had Michael Jordan and Shaq, that don't move the needle for me. Because you still gotta get those dudes to play the way they need to play to be champions.
Right. What I give him ultimate credit for is managing egos.
Right.
That's his best asset, is managing superstar transcendent egos. He was great at that. But that XO, you can miss me with that. Give me Coach Pop all day, every day.
Well, you still gotta have the wherewithal to use the system. We saw that in the Last Dance. You know, he had to convince Mike to even, you know, be a part of the system,
Right,
to
ego,
be okay with
managing
the
ego.
system.
That's what I give him credit for. He's
Um,
excellent at that
you,
part.
you know, and to believe that it will work and know that his players could fit in it. And
Right.
then
And
just think of it.
Get
And
Kobe and
then
Shaq to work together when they couldn't stand each other. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, absolutely. Great coaching. Great coaching personalities, managing personalities. But when you talk about coaching the game of basketball, give me Coach Pop all day long.
now,
Oh, come on. You just
too,
being stubborn now. You
he
know the
too.
real answer now, but
No,
you
he's
just
too.
being stubborn
He's
now. You
too.
know what I'm saying?
He's two to me. He's definitely two to me, and I'll forever stand on. Shaq didn't win a damn thing before. He wasn't even close to winning the damn thing before Phil got to LA. In LA, he wasn't close in LA. Yeah, you can almost say he wasn't close in Orlando, the way he got beat to sleep by Dream in the finals when he was in Orlando, but he didn't win anything. He wasn't close to winning anything in LA, getting swept and gentlemen swept by Utah Jazz in the playoffs year in and year out before Phil got there. It's Phil for me. But you know, you know how people do these days. If you want to go 1A and 1B, I could possibly go there, but it's Phil for me. Because you got to throw the load management in there. You got to take some notches down for load
Oh,
management.
now he's taking
You
notches
got to
away.
discredit them. You got to discredit them for load.
Oh boy.
Well, I gotta take away from Phil for team hopping like LeBron then.
Look, I can't believe you said that. That's crazy. That's crazy.
But Dr. Rick, man, last thoughts on Coach Pop, man, before we get up out of here, man.
So, just want to, wish Pop the best moving forward. He obviously has a potential transcendent player on his roster in his new role as president of basketball operations or whatever the exact title is going to be. So hopefully he can, use his expertise to build around Wemby and put, some solid players around that. One thing that, the Spurs have, always had a problem with is that it's not a big free agent destination.
Right.
It's, once again, which to me expands his legacy because he had to build through the draft and free agent pickups. People weren't just knocking down the door to come to San Antonio. So
especially now that he's not the coach. Oh man.
exactly. So, I wish him the best. I feel like, he still has a lot to give as long as he can physically, maintain what he needs to do. And, he, for me, like I said, go down as the greatest NBA coach of all time.
No doubt.
Yeah, I mean, so it's just a matter of now just and if he can put together a winning team now back as GM or whatever his role is, then that just furthers his legacy even more. Already, Hall of Fame legacy, is just going to be augmented by if he can put a team around Wemby that's at least challenging, for a playoff run. So that's where I am, man. And I hate to see him go, but every time, Father Time's undefeated. So
Been a hell of a run, no
go
doubt.
away. I just think back to all those years, and battling against Laker fans and battling against, all these other, teams and the Heat, all the people on the riding the Heat and all of that toward the end, man. And it's just, just glad to see, that I was there, glad to be there, during that run and see him now be able to get away on his own terms and do whatever he needs to do moving forward. So yeah, I wish him the best. Good luck, Pop, and hopefully you can get us back into contention soon with Wemby.
No doubt, no doubt. Jerry, what you got, bro?
Well, I could be somewhat heartfelt and sympathize with Rick when I say, wish El Jefe the much success in the future and great, improved health. I hope he's able to settle into his new position well, but I wish him all the worst when it comes to putting his team together. That's for damn sure. Um, I don't. I'm not a Wemby fan in the least bit.
You
Uh,
know,
I'm not a De'Aaron Fox fan
you know,
in the least bit. I do like the new dude or whatever. It seems like that might be a new nucleus, but I wish they forever need somebody else to come in there and help them actually win. So you can miss me with all that success thing right there. But yeah, Pop, one of the greatest of all times, one of the best to do it. I appreciate what he's done for the game globally. I appreciate him being another dynastic type coach and putting together teams that play the game like I like. I've always liked to play the game. Defensive minded, gritty, play for one another. Everybody's mentioned the fact that he's been able to do it over time. He's able to do it in different styles, different eras. Um, Greatly appreciate the ass whooping that he was able to deliver to LeBron James during his career,
yes, sir.
sweeping them the first time he made the playoffs, and then a gentleman sweep on the way out with the oldest version of the Spurs team that we ever saw. And the simple adjustment made to beat that big three team in Miami, which blew my mind the whole series. All they did was move the ball quicker. That's it. That's all it took to beat LeBron James, D Wade, and Chris Bosh. Let's move the ball faster. Let's make them play more defense and speed them up. And it worked. And the way he used Boris Diaw in that series was genius. I mean, genius. He had this dude overweight, locking up Braun on certain plays, and being an integral part of the offense. Brilliant. It was definitely brilliant. So even with me saying that, then I'll leave it at 1A, 1B. I will. I'll leave it right there. 1A, 1B with him and Phil Jackson. So yeah, definitely a great career. Salute to him. Definitely appreciate what he's done for the game.
Yeah, and what comes to mind for me, first of all, is damn, I wish Ray Allen hadn't hit that damn shot. Man, the conversation about LeBron James would be so different. It would be so different right now. I mean, man, we wouldn't even have to be talking about this dude other than the fact this is 20 whatever year. You know what I'm saying? That's it. The whole conversation, he saved his whole legacy and kept this whole stupid conversation going about him being the GOAT. But let me not digress. You know what I'm saying? I just hate Ray Allen made that shot. You know what I'm saying? I really, really hate it. You know what I'm saying? And Pop, of course, would have another chip. My Spurs would have another chip. You know what I'm saying? But like I said, for me, it was just pleasure watching this Spurs because before that point, man, it was hard to be a Spurs fan, boy. I ain't gonna even lie. We had some nice teams, but man, we couldn't quite ever get where we needed to go. And he brought a championship culture to my team, you know what I'm saying? And it was just really a privilege to watch him play. The way the defense picked up immediately after he got there, you could see it even in that half a season where he took over. It just totally changed. You know what I'm saying? The effort changed, and he got rid of players that didn't want to play his way. And so I always respected him for that, man, and just the culture that he built around my Spurs. And I'm just hoping now that we can kind of recapture some of it in his new role, maybe if we get anything out of him in the next couple of years, I wish him nothing but longevity at this point. Hopefully he can be around, like Dr. Rick said, for a while and kind of guide us to that next iteration of championship ball. You know what I'm saying? Which right now I'm not going to be. I'm kind of with you at this point on one thing, Jerry. I don't know what it is right now. You know what I'm saying? With Wemby, I'm getting a little worried myself about his health and is a dude that big able to really, really stay healthy, that tall? You know what I'm saying? Is he going to be able to stay healthy? I'm a little bit more worried than I was before, but I think we got a good nucleus. I like the rookie that we got. I think Pop has made some good decisions here recently as far as what we needed to do. Luckily, Wemby kind of fell in our lap with that draft. We got lucky on that one again. So, but as far as Coach Pop, man, kudos to you, bro. Thank you for everything you did for the Spurs, man. As a Spurs fan, I salute you. Most definitely, you did your damn thing for those 20 whatever years. You know what I'm saying? So, but that's it for today, people. Trash talking with the old head, Dr. Rick. Thank you for joining us, bro. We appreciate you taking time out your busy schedule, man, to be with us as another Spurs fan. For Gary and Greg Sears, who out of pocket again, not playing like a champion this week. Trash talking with the old heads, man. We'll see y'all next week. We out.
Yeah, I saw that dude clubbing or something he was doing, you know.
Hey, man, out there on the dance floor getting it in while we in here working. You know what I'm saying?
He out there drinking and kicking it out there. That's
kicking it while we in here working.